Karibu tena, unaendelea kutazama Citizen Town Hall ambapo hii leo tunazungumzia masuala ya wanasiasa kutoa pesa. Kuna baadhi ya wananchi ambao wanasema kuwa mkono mtupu haurambwi. Lakini kuna mmoja hapa anahisi kuwa yale ambaye amesemwa na baadhi ya waheshimiwa ambao tuko nao hapa si kweli. Simama Misheni.
Thank you. I'm Kasti Micheni, the Vice President, Mount Kenya University. My question goes to Mheshimiwa Mwaura. Mheshimiwa Mwaura, we have never seen citizens parading in your homes. We have not seen Kenyans coming for handouts in your places. My question is, where do you want the world to believe that Kenyans are all that poor to reach for your handouts? And then I'll also ask, why don't you think that Kenyans are not in need of money, they are in need of jobs, they are in need of better resources and better things than handouts? That's my question.
Honorable Mwaura, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kasti. Before I come to you, Valentine, you made a case asking whether people would go for handouts or not go for handouts and elect leaders. I simply ask you, just like your name, if you fail to take your girlfriend out during Valentine's Day, would they be very happy? Would that girlfriend of yours be very happy? So let us be honest here. Let's not try to be good here on TV. Kasti, just yesterday, there's somebody who had come to my house with a CV for jobs. We get, if I can count the number of jobs demands I get on a daily basis, there are so many of them. They come to our house, they say, I have not eaten for 3 days, my child is sick. They come all the time. In fact, you have to tell them, please don't come to my house, let's meet in the office. So it is not true. In fact, I would want to challenge Citizen TV to even sporadically spend time with a member of parliament on a daily basis, like one here, one there. The story is the same. We are not coming here to make stories. And don't use examples. Njeru Kathangu ran for office 22 years ago in 1997. We are now in 2019, going to 2020. Things have really changed. The politicians you see here, Gladys and I, we were student leaders together, by the way, at the university. That time when we were campaigning in 2002 is very different from now. In fact, then we never spent money. But today, the youth like yourselves who come looking for support from us to help them to become vice president of MKU, and some of them we mentored, the kind of budgets that they come with, to us with. Even you know how much you spend during your campaign. You are a student leader now. What about when you become an MP? Tuambiane ukweli bwana.
Honorable Mwaura, let me ask you this.
Yes.
If the job is that hard,
yes,
why hang on?
Because
why apply?
Because we have the spirit to serve. Let me tell you, we have the burden to change this country. And that burden cannot be wished away. We, every day of our lives, bemoan when we go to other jurisdictions. We want our country to grow. So we can't give up. In fact, sometimes we say maybe we can use this wrong approach to campaign, but when we are there, we can change it. It becomes increasingly difficult. In fact, sometimes you feel like you are the one who is being changed. But we have a vision for this country. We can't give up.
Manyora, what do you think?
You don't change the country by glorifying poverty. You don't change the country by turning people into beggars. What we are doing as leaders in this country is to turn Kenyans into beggars. I like what that young girl is saying. There is a lot, and I'm repeating what I said earlier, there is a lot leadership can do to put to an end this culture of begging, of handouts. For example, when Saitoti was going around the country in 1988, people told him, unless you outlaw Harambe, then there's no other way of identifying a leader except development conscious people who go around during Harambe's giving money they have stolen. So you can create laws that can stop that, you see, and a host of other things you can do legislatively to ensure that Kenyans are not beggars in their own country.
Wahiga, let me answer, Professor.
Briefly.
Let me tell you, laws...
we are taking the time of the audience. This is their show.
Laws are imaginative. Laws only work if people believe in them. The lack of rule of law, even if you have... I mean, there are so many laws in this country, but people flout them because they don't believe in them. The best way not to be elected in this country is to imagine you'll go speak well, and then people will follow you. Professor, we have tried that. We'll continue to try that. We'll not give up, but it is the easiest way not to be elected.
Senator, you sound very frustrated, Senator. We'll come back and talk a bit about that.
You mentioned my name. I didn't give an example about that I was elected 22 years ago, meaning that times has evolved. Evolved that from where I was, things are supposed to be much better today, isn't it? If the evolution was working correctly. Meaning that Mwaura thinks that giving handouts is slightly better than being elected without it. Number two is that...
That's what you read into what he said.
That is what he is saying. That because I was elected without paying,
he doesn't agree, but
now
no,
they are better because they are paying.
That's not what I mean.
But the next thing I'm asking is this. What we created then is still the same thing they are enjoying today. In fact, they have been complaining that the CDF is being taken away from them. And I read also an intention of taking money from the CDF, right? I am asking this. What is it that parliaments, 3 parliaments, have done to create other funds so that our people's poverty is alleviated?
Okay.
Because it is important.
Respond to that just briefly and say that the 2010 Constitution created the biggest thing in terms of bringing development closer to our people. And this is devolution. Devolution, apart from CDF, and this is the reason why CDF is going in the way it is, because now we have 2 levels of government, and they're saying execution should be not with members of parliament, but with county executives and so on. We still have challenges of corruption at our devolved units, but I think devolution was a big thing, and laws that have facilitated devolution. So I think
okay.
what
Honorable Kathangu, let her finish.
And let me also just say something else around the issue of passing of time. And let me just say that Mwaura and I, yes, were student leaders, and the example he gave was very apt. I was Secretary General of the Students' Union in Kenyatta University. I can tell you my posters were black and white, which I photocopied at the cyber in KU for free because I was working there. You know, and that is not the students' game today. You who are students and student leaders, you know that your posters now must be colored A3. You know, and they have to be big, and it has to be fancy, and you now want cars, and you want, you know, you say, oh, you know, I have to transport my supporters from here to there. Those are the budgets we are given to support. So times have changed, not necessarily for the better, in fact for the worse, in terms of
order from my panelists,
movements.
please. Let's get some more questions. Go ahead, Mashirima.
Kuna mmoja hapa anauliza kama wanawalaumu pia hawa wanafunzi, viongozi wanafunzi. Ni kuwa hawa wanafunzi wamejifunza kutoka kwao. Lakini kuna Brian hapa na swali, simama tafadhali, kuhusiana na swala la fedha.
Okay, thank you. My name is Sengeli Brian, a student at Mount Kenya University and a politician to be. Now, my question is, now the convoluted wordings of criticism won't help us. But let's come to reality. You people, you understand very well that the government even doesn't have enough money for development. We're even going for additional funds to China, where perhaps you have a 0 loan limit. But now, where do you think you people, as you continue masquerading around the parliament asking for additional funds, where do you think these additional funds will come from? Don't you think that you are adding more burden to taxpayers? Even punda amechoka, si ataanguka chini.
Honorable Wanga, you had wanted to carry on. You can now respond to that.
Wahiga, I like the English words. They're very big English words. Masquerading around around Parliament looking for more funds. We do not masquerade.
That's what he sees as some of
we do
the
not
actions.
We do not masquerade. I think his point around the allowances, and this is a very emotive issue, and I think it's brought about by the recent debate around the house allowance issue. And as I had said earlier, Wahiga, for 5 years the last time, we went by SRC, and I think our brother Njeru said we have power to determine our own salaries and so on. No. That is not the case. The case is, and I sat in the Parliamentary Service Commission, I can say authoritatively, our salaries as state officers are set by SRC. Any adjustment can only be made by SRC. In fact, it is only an appeal you make to SRC. For example, on the issue of house allowances, the only state officer in Kenya today that does not have a house allowance, Wahiga, was a member of parliament.
But this SRC have come out and said that housing allowance was not, their idea. They've actually spoken against it. So how?
No, they're just speaking against it in public. But I can tell you that anything that is done is a negotiated agreement moving forward. But when it happens, because it is so unpopular, some people want to run away from it. But I can tell you, according to Section 230 of the Constitution that creates the SRC, it regulates our salaries. The only thing that the Parliamentary Service Commission does is facilitation, not salaries and allowances.
Okay. Briefly.
You see, I agree. Of course, when Gladys and Maura are talking here and I'm here, they would want that my opinion appears to be a bit skewed against them. I'm not against them. But what I'm saying is this. I have had this debate about the 250,000 shillings house allowance. I have it. But there is also logic and reason that should be employed in it. One, that every member of parliament is qualified after elections for several things, including house mortgage. Now, how many of you have not taken the house mortgage? Number two is that every election or after every term, you are still qualified, like you, ma'am, that you've been elected twice, and every time you are qualified for another house, isn't it? Now, what Muturi is telling us, the speaker, is this, that those of you who do not want to buy another house or a house, then you are qualified for a house allowance. And according to me, is you have one house or two houses or three houses, surely you may not need the fourth or the fifth in your 50th term. What you may require is a house allowance to maintain what you already have. And it is not going to be for this year, maybe it's going to be for 2022, when you have accumulated enough. You need to explain the people whether that is true or not true, so that we don't read things.
All right, I'll give you a minute to respond, and half a second. Mashirima is really waiting with more questions. Go ahead, Honorable Maura.
I think, taking from what Mtumishi Njeru Kathangu is saying, first and foremost, mortgage is not a salary. This idea of people thinking that you get 20 million immediately you come to parliament, that's not true. Mortgage is optional, it's not mandatory, and it is against your pay. It's very unfair to come and argue and say that because of this and that, members of parliament are not entitled to house allowance. We can argue about the amount, but house allowance, even you, Wahiga, and many people in the audience, they actually get house allowance.
I don't get house allowance.
And this is as per the ruling of the court about deputy governors. And the ruling was very clear. All state officers, including member of parliament, are entitled to house allowance. Number two, many members of parliament don't even make it for a second term. Right now, as we speak, over 75% of the people who were in the last parliament went home. So you cannot say that you keep on getting a new house, because very few actually do make it. Number three, even members of parliament have to have two houses. One at home, where the constituents go, and the one in Nairobi here. So, well, Professor Manyora may have 2 or 3 girlfriends. That's why he's advocating for one. That's not the purview of members of parliament.
And Honorable Maura,
but what we are trying to say is
this is in an economy where Kenya is ranked globally. This is data that I got today from the World Poverty Clock. Kenya is ranked 8th poor country in the world and 6th in Africa. Does that not concern you? Away from the law, away from what the law says about what a state officers are entitled to.
Even if you are to zero rate the salaries of members of parliament and the allocation to parliament itself,
in comparison to the GDP of Kenya and the needs of Kenyans.
Wahiga, kindly listen to me.
Go ahead.
Even if you are to zero rate the salaries of members of parliament and all expenditure of parliament, you still have those problems. To use the salaries of members of parliament as scapegoat is to run away from the problem. The monies that are being lost in dubious, government projects by the executive, the wastage there, is actually what we should be addressing. But to come and profile members of parliament and silence them because they are minority, it is not going to change. It's not.
Okay, fair enough. Sorry, hang on. Manyora,
just quickly about this house allowance. Where it could be true there was a court ruling. But does that mean, therefore, parliament has a power to take it itself? You have money in the bank. Can you go walk to the bank and take it yourself? There's a process through which you get your money. So even if they were entitled to the house allowance, as per the court ruling, they ought to have waited for it to be sanctioned by SRC. All of us, I'm a public servant. Sometimes the university wants to pay us some money, but they seek authority from SRC. That is the position. But much more importantly, I agree with that truly. We need to pay our MPs better than they are being paid. We need to pay many Kenyans.
Even if they are paid better than
we want to pay MPs more than they are earning and other Kenyans. Because if you have an economy where people don't earn well, then that economy cannot move. These malls people are building, the occupancy rate you can check even here, so low. Because Kenyans don't have money to shop in those malls. So we need Kenyans to be paid well. But Gladys and my friend Maura, it is insensitive, it is reckless, it is tactless to get more money and ask for more money in the manner in which you ask for it in a country that is where Kenya is today. A leader who doesn't understand and read the mood of the people is not a leader. Kenyans cannot understand how you, on top of what you have, you still want 250,000 shillings house allowance. It is simply crazy to Kenyans. It could be right, it could be legal, but it is tactless.
It is tactless. Okay, Mashima, come in.
Kabla ya kuchukua swali, labda nisome kauli mbili hapa. At Agri Willis katika mtandao wa Twitter anasema, our politicians are chief priests of corruption. Even Satan is shocked at the current level of stealing by politicians in Kenya. The only way voters can hit back on them is by demanding for handouts. Fungu la 10. Mwingine hapa anajiita I'm the bulldozer. Anasema, years back, I visited my MP's house and I found over 200 people in his compound with all sorts of problems. Some needed money for food, for burials, for hospital bills, fees, harambes. I support salary increment for MPs. Lakini Felix hapa nadhani ana suluhisho. Simama kidogo.
So, Dr. Sana Mashirima, my name is Felix Otieno. I'm the resident manager at the Well Karen. My question goes to Honorable Wanga, because I'm sure Honorable Moura will not get chance to answer this because he's a nominated senator. He doesn't have the responsibility of the people on his shoulder. But you, Honorable Wanga, you have. Now, what hard thing do you find in empowering people down there? Build good schools, construct better roads, build hospitals, ensure that people are empowered so that when they come, when you visit them down there, you don't become, or you are not assumed to be a god. You are not worshipped. What problem do you have in empowering people down there? I think by doing that, the youth like myself, we will not be worshipping you for those 100 shillings that you give here and there.
Yeah, in fact, I agree with Felix completely, but I even agree with Bulldozer more, because that is the true situation of the lives of a member of parliament. To be honest, I mean, let's just be very honest. Your compound would have so many people at the same time, each asking for something, not necessarily asking for a pay rise for that purpose, but that is the life of a member of parliament. You're a welfare officer in your constituency. But Felix, this is how we are going to end it, by what you're saying. Let me take Homa Bay, for example, because that is where I represent. There were once fish factories, fish industries. People would fish, and their fish would not be taken at low prices to any other place. Their fish would be processed by Capital Fish right in Homa Bay. That factory would employ 500 young people who would not be on the streets or anywhere asking for any MP's money. And this is why we need to take very, very seriously the issue of revival of our industries. And I think Herman talked about cheap imports. We used to grow cotton. Coffee used to have good prices. Milk had good prices. Tea had good prices. Mira was there for, people from Meru. Our industries were working at one point. And that is why probably Mtumishi here at some point was elected by the people of Runyenjes without them asking him for anything. Sugarcane was working. My father educated me through proceeds of sugarcane. Those industries are all down now. And this is why we are having a very serious conversation. Every leader in their region, right now in our region, we are talking seriously about revival of the fishing industries, revival of the sugar industries, and that is why, Wahiga, we appreciate, for us, some of us appreciate the handshake, because it has brought political stability where we can now stop thinking about politics and think seriously about how to change the fortunes of our people. You cannot do it as an individual MP. As an individual woman rep, for example, I don't have much that I could go, for example, and start putting into reviving a fish industry. But if we combine forces in Parliament, pass whatever necessary laws, but at the same time, see how to support the Big Four agenda so that our industries are up. They are running. People go back to growing cotton. When we used to grow cotton, in those days when Kikomi was working, Rivertex was working, let me tell you, I never used to, my father never had to ask anybody for money to take me to school, because we would just pick cotton, take it to the store, get my pay, go my way, and that is the place we have to go back to.
Okay. Add something small.
What Felix said is that if you empower people, look here, why do people come to MPs? Because of school fees, because of health challenges with hospital bills. You people allow the executive to put money in the wrong places. Instead of putting money in education, according to UNESCO standards in terms of percentages of GDP, you don't allocate money for health. You see, that's what he's saying. Trump is having a problem getting money to put up the wall because of Parliament, and that's what I'm saying. Parliament has the power to make life better for Kenyans by allocating money, by denying the executive.
Since they haven't responded, why don't they use that power?
Ask them. That's what the problem. Rather they give handouts.
All right.
Let me answer you.
Go ahead, Honorable Mwaura.
That question, Wahiga. But before I do answer that question about why we don't do it, I want to correct Otieno there by saying that members who are nominated do not have a responsibility. We do. First, because whether you're elected or nominated, you are a leader in your area of jurisdiction. Even today, I have demands of funerals, of Harambes. They don't care. Number two, there are people we represent. We don't just represent ourselves. It's you and your salary. No. People with disabilities, the whole of this country, they look up to one Isaac Mwaura and others. I educate people from across the country. If I was to give you a list, from Kuria, from Mombasa, everywhere. And they look up to me. I don't have a CDF. I don't have a kitty. But I gladly do so because I want to empower people like myself who look like me so that tomorrow they can also be where I am or even better. Number three, the issue, so it's not good to diminish the work of nominated members.
Okay.
Number three,
tackle that. Go ahead.
We did that in 2013. Let me give you a story. I was in the budget committee. I'm the vice chair now of finance and budget of the Senate committee. We went and we slashed a lot of monies in the budget because of the power of the purse. We were called to State House and we were given a tongue lashing that we were interfering with the Jubilee manifesto agenda.
Why would you go to State House as an independent
because
body?
The majority party sponsors both the executive, the presidency, and Parliament. And insofar as we have a situation where people vote for their political party or coalition, there will be no objectivity. Parliament becomes an extension of the executive. This is a problem of supermajority. When you have a proper working separation of powers between the three arms of government, then you can have objectivity. But as long as, if I see today, my dear President Uhuru Kenyatta is under threat, if today I'm told we follow, people become like robots. And if you don't do that, then you are being told you're not towing the party line. So really, we have a national treasury also that believes that it has the power of the past. You know? So if you look at Article 114, it's the most difficult article because you have to do any budget in concurrence with the National Treasury. So it is not that members of Parliament don't want to change the laws. How many times have we actually been able to slash budgets? Right now, as we speak, we are in dispute between the National Assembly and the Senate because of 9 billion shillings to counties. So we try. We don't just sit back and say pass.
Okay, fair enough.
Mwaura, what I hear Mwaura saying, what I hear him saying is that members of Parliament are toothless because they have got political parties that they must follow and therefore instructed to go to vote as per the head of that political party. Meaning that Parliament is only about 4 or 5 members, the heads of political parties. All the others are actually wasting time.
My goodness, what a statement. Okay, Mashirima, go ahead.
Wacha nimpatie mmoja ambaye ni jirani kutoka taifa la Tanzania. Simama tafadhali.
Naam, shukran. Kwa jina naitwa Bakari Simeon kutoka Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania. Na swali langu nalielekeza kwa Mheshimiwa Isaac na Mheshimiwa Gladys. Je, majuzi tumeona kwamba kumekuwa na viongozi ambao wamejitokeza hadharani kukashifu kule kuchangia hela katika michango mbalimbali ya ile ya kanisa. Je, ni mikakati ipi ambayo serikali imeweka kuhakikisha kwamba ili swala la kuchangia ambalo linafungamana na ili swala la handout kwamba linafutiliwa mbali, kwa mfano kama sheria ambazo mmeweka katika bunge? Shukran.
I hope you have understood the question appropriately.
Mwanzo nafikiri wacha nichangie niseme kwamba asante kwa swali lako. Lakini watu walokole kwenye makanisani, hata ukikwenda kwenye mchango utoe, lakini urudi kwenye pale kikao cha mhubiri, lazima pia uache kitu. Mimi mwenyewe nimeshuhudia haya wakati nafanya kampeni kule Ruiru. Hata kuna wakati nimekatazwa kuhutubia watu wa kanisa la SDA kwa sababu sikuwa nimemuona padre ama mchungaji pale mwanzo nimpatie na hela shilingi 5,000. Ufisadi umekidhiri hivi kwamba leo hii wenye kanisa watakuombea wakuambia kura ni zako kwa sababu umetoa. Mwenzako akija pia mpinzani vile vile. Kwa hiyo sio itikadi ama kanuni za sheria. Ni kwa sababu hii kasumba imeingia katika akilini mwa watu, sembuse kwamba watu wanaona kanisa kama ni mahali pa kujipatia na mfuko wa pesa ili wao wajilimbikizie na mali, wasifike waonekane kama wao ndio ambao wanawakilisha Mungu hapa nchini.
Thank you.
And I think
I need to take a quick break here.
In fact, I want to reply in Kiswahili. You'll bear with me. But what I'd like to say is every institution must now play its role in this fight against corruption. And the church must also play its role. But we have seen the church commercialized, taken up, even a simple debate of we do not want to accept proceeds of corruption within the church. When one bishop raised that, other bishops said, no, us we are happy. Keep bringing us your money. So we did put up a law, by the way, which stopped Harambes, but it stopped it 8 months before election. But even at that point, it was still difficult to implement, because while you as a sitting politician, you've stopped Harambe, your opponents will continue to go to Harambes, and therefore they will defeat the purpose. Harambe was a good thing from the beginning, because it was always the way of Kenyans pulling together to help people in need. But it has now, as we speak, been misused and become an avenue for money laundering. In fact, people clean up dirty money. People are keeping money in their houses, Wahiga, as we speak. Heaps and heaps of money. The only way to launder it and make it clean is by carrying 10 million, taking to one church, 15 million, taking to the other. The church does not stop to ask you, where do you get this money from? They do not even stop to think, what's your salary, Wanga? If you brought us 500,000 this week, next week you're giving 500,000, another week you're giving 500,000, where are you getting this money from? The church must also help us on this matter of corruption, and they must stand firm.
Okay.
They cannot stand to say, like I had a bishop say, that there is no dirty money. There is dirty money, because if I bring money that I cannot explain where I get it from, then the church must come to a point where they say no. And if you give, whatever you give, let's just see, what it is.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But Parliament must also...
Parliament can help, because in other countries, for example, you account for every money you have, you receive. You pay taxes. If you introduce laws governing the circulation of money, just how much cash you can carry in this country, the Parliament and other leaders are up against the 1 million rule, the $10,000 rule, where you can't walk into a bank and withdraw $1 million. We need more of those laws so that very few people walk with money.
When you're telling somebody they can't withdraw 1 million shillings from the bank, somebody else is walking with 10 million every weekend.
We need
Nobody
a
is
law.
asking them how they got that 10 million out of the bank.
Okay.
So the bank is, the bank is just one place. We must ask questions beyond just the 1 million
beyond
from
the 1
the
million
bank.
shillings. Hang on. We need to take a quick break. Let me read 2 quick tweets here. Fimon Nyambane says, if you give a man a fish, he is hungry again in an hour. If you teach him how to fish, you do him a good turn. This behavior of handouts by MPs does not add value at all. While Wamasharia says sensitization of the Kenyan citizens is urgent on the need to participate in politics as they should. Soberly, stop asking for handouts. Politicians should dance according to the electorate's music and not the other way around. We take a quick break. You're watching the Monday Report. We'll be right back with more.